Hello and welcome to Awaken and Ascend. I am Jennifer Regular, your host, and also the founder of Lighting the Path. And I'm back with another phenomenal guest who has been guided to elevate collective consciousness and our ability to spread love, kindness, and compassion. Her name is Dawn Michele Jackson, and she shares her expertise as an advanced grief recovery method specialist to help individuals heal their hearts, transform their lives, and rediscover joy. There is much she has written about as a best-selling author, and today she is present with us to share that it is through healing our hearts that we gain the ability to become the highest version of ourselves and share our gifts with the world. Welcome, Dawn Michele Jackson. It is so wonderful to have you here, and I'm so excited to delve into this conversation that's available
Thank
for
you,
us
Jennifer.
today. Oh, you are so welcome. And you're joining us from Oregon, and I'm in the
I,
west coast of Canada. And I love that no matter where people are joining from, and you can put that in the comments about where that might be, we're in this moment of now and being present fully together and just surrendering to what's available to us in this moment. And I'm curious, Don, what brought you into this moment? I know you've had a past career as a nurse, and now you're a grief method recovery specialist and really helping people to heal their hearts. And so I know you've been put on this earth with a huge mission, and I'd love how you've been able to step into that. So share a little bit about what that's been like for you.
sure. So after high school, I immediately went to college and then got my nursing degree. And I loved my career at first. I worked with patients that were critically ill. I worked with children. Um, I worked with trauma patients. It was amazing. And it was such a wonderful career to be able to practice in all different ways. But it came to the point where I knew that I was meant for something else, that that wasn't where I was supposed to stay stuck. And I was noticing in my patients that so many of them were really suffering emotionally and mentally and physically. And it was all accumulating in their body. So they'd end up with these physical health issues related to all these events and losses in their life that they didn't know how to process. And during COVID, I really started to realize that I needed to do something different because my career wasn't fulfilling me anymore. Sure, I was helping people, but not in the way I wanted to. Like, I really wanted people to have an overall wellness, mind, body, and spirit. And I wanted them to realize that no matter what had happened in their life previously, they still could experience joy again. And so that's the point where I decided I was going to step out of my nursing career because I also was starting to feel emotionally, physically, and mentally unwell because there were so many things that I was doing in my nursing career that didn't jive with my value system. You know, I work so hard to eat healthy and make sure that I surround myself with healthy things in my life. Yet I was telling people we're going to put you on another medication. And it's not to say that there's anything wrong with medications that treat different conditions, but we also need to look at the whole person. And can we address things a different way? Can we look at someone's emotional health and their pain and address that? And maybe then they won't need to be on a medication. And so that was where I was just feeling a lot of friction in my value system and beliefs. And I decided that I needed to step out of my nursing career and step into something else that felt healthier for me and gave me the ability to help individuals in a different way.
Oh, thank goodness for that, for your sake, and for all those you've come to serve as a result of making that decision, that conscious choice.
Right.
And that's what I discovered too along my own journey is there's many initiations, rites of passage, if you will, that we pass through. And those roles that we take on serves its own sense of purpose and gives us one sense of self and has different parts of us expressed through that. And I know for myself in my own career of over 20 years working in social services with many different populations, I too have seen the toll our beliefs can take, our thoughts, our emotions, our upbringing, society, all of the different influences that can take us out of alignment, take us out of our own truth, and create barriers for ourselves, even those who are in those roles to serve those people. When it's not fully aligned, when it doesn't speak to our full potential of what we can be sharing and offering and helping people to the
Right.
fullest, because we're restricted in that way, the systems are sick and then we get sick, right? And so compassion fatigue was a very real thing for me, adrenal fatigue, just completely shutting down.
Mm.
And recognizing too that yes, there's more that can be expressed of ourselves through the roles we have if we approach it in a different way, and we can do all the things to take care of ourselves physically, mentally, and emotionally.
Mm.
And we can look at what else is possible.
Right.
Where can we feel more fulfilled, more rewarding, have a bigger impact, a greater influence, and be more aligned and live
Mhm.
out our values? And I love that you talk about emotions as well, because that's where the embodiment truly happens. And if we're not emotionally well, then it's hard for us to really anchor that kind of energy and capacity that it takes to move into our calling and work at
Oh,
a different level, right?
yeah, that's so true. And honestly, my life path, had I not done a lot of the emotional healing that I have, I wouldn't have been able to step into the next version of myself, my gift that I can share with the world and helping other people because I needed to do it for myself first. So
Absolutely.
I remember when I signed up, or actually my partner signed me up to do the grief recovery method certification training because he wanted me to do it with them. I said, well, I don't have any grief because I didn't realize the magnitude of grief, that it wasn't just about losing someone to death. It was all kinds of things. It was, your life not feeling as fulfilling as you'd hoped it would be. It's, experiencing different traumatic events in your childhood or any time in your life. It's, a divorce, which is what I went through. And that's really what catapulted me into my own healing, was my whole life was turned upside down all of a sudden. And I didn't know how to navigate that. And so I searched for some tools that could help me heal my heart that was hurting. And it was through that healing that I was able to see more clearly that what I had been doing wasn't aligned with me anymore. It had been in the past, but it wasn't in that present moment. And then I started looking towards the future, and what is it? What can I offer the world? How can I bring more light into the world and more joy? What does that look like? And it took me a few years to be able to step into it because it was scary. I've always been that person that grew up and had the good job and the good benefits. And stepping out of that was created a lot of fear. It was like, am I going to be okay? And I always remind myself, years ago, I opened a fortune cookie after I had some Chinese food, and it said, you need not worry about your future. And it's been in my wallet for probably 20 years. And anytime I start feeling a little anxious or fearful about what the future holds, I think back to that because I truly believe that the universe does support us. And as long as we continue to step into those open doors and those opportunities, it will support us in whatever way it can to keep us move forward on our path, to create that more light and love and joy in the world.
Absolutely. And as we move away from the people, places that dim our light, then we
Mhm.
become brighter and become a role model of that light. And that brightens up our own path to see more clearly
Yeah.
and to move forward and make the decisions that are most life supportive from us. And it requires a lot of trust, a lot of
Mhm.
courage, a lot of faith. We may have lost a little bit of that along the way, thinking we made the wrong decision or a bad decision, and having to rest fully in that and recover from that to know that, and it's not a full recovery either. It's more of a learning, a digestion, integration process that happens
Right.
to elevate us onto our next level of expression and being and how we want to be in our relationships, how we want to be treated in those relationships, what
Mhm.
doors to open for those new possibilities, or even just having the courage to walk through them when they're available to us, and not go back, to be more future oriented than always dwelling on the past and what might have not worked out. And I agree with you so much, Dawn Michele Jackson, about the different types of loss. And I know
Mhm.
a really big one is shattered dreams,
Yeah.
losing the dream and how to rebuild that, how to keep going on. And
Mhm.
so it makes so much sense when you talk about healing our hearts as the gateway to being the best version of ourselves, the next level version of ourselves. So, and I kind of like the idea more of our highest self than the best self, because the best self sounds to me lately like it's kind of feeds into that performance based mentality,
Yeah,
where
I
we're trying to achieve or accomplish or be a certain way to live up to some kind of
agree.
standard. And rather from our highest self, our highest potential, our highest expression from our soul, and deepening our connection to the source,
Mhm.
in whatever form and shape that might take, our spiritual source of power,
Right.
and really strengthening that. That's what can help us uphold that trust and faith and help us have the courage to move forward and be a vessel of the light shining
Mhm.
through. So I'd love to hear more about that. And I know the audience would too, about healing our hearts. How do we do that especially when it can feel so broken?
Yes, every one of us goes through events that we could consider grieving events from the time we're born throughout our whole life. And sadly, many of us don't have, or most of us, should I say, haven't learned the tools to navigate those difficult times. Most of us learn, in childhood, if you fall, if you skin your knee, this is what you need to do. You need to go home and clean it and put a band-aid on. But we aren't taught what we do when our emotional heart hurts. Normally it's, well, let's go get an ice cream cone when you're little or something like that. And then we also hear messages like, oh, be strong, you're okay, just keep moving on. And sadly, those minimize the emotions that we experience, whether it's somebody was bullying us at school, whether it's our first love broke up with us, we lost a grandparent, whatever it is. But we learn to minimize all those emotions and we keep them inside. And that's oftentimes what leads to unhealthy coping mechanisms like alcohol and drug use and, you know, food eating disorders, shopping addictions, all those kind of things come from a place that we feel hurt inside and we try to numb ourselves. We try to forget the pain. So, one of the first things that we can do is choose to be emotionally honest. Now, that's not easy because most of us don't like to feel pain, whether it's physical pain or emotional pain. But I always tell people being emotionally honest with yourself and then with others who you trust is your first step in healing because we need to feel those emotions to heal them and release them. And so that's really important to find those people that can be a listening heart for you, somebody that will hold space but won't try to fix, because most of us want others to feel good. And so we often say something to try and fix the situation. But the truth is that we can't fix what they're going through, but we can hold space. We can listen. And it's such a wonderful gift that we give to someone when we allow them to be heard, allow them to speak what's ever on their heart, and we just listen. And so that's one of the first things is just to be emotionally honest when we're hurting so that we can start that path toward healing.
Such a poignant point, being able to be honest, to live in
Mm.
that truth. to fully embrace it. And that's where we develop our authentic way of being. This is how we integrate a higher consciousness model of living through this practice of owning our emotions, acknowledging them, treating them with tenderness, having that self compassion. And that's
Mhm.
something that you've been called into as well, is coming into this space where we build our capacity and ability to spread that love and compassion, starting with ourselves, starting with
Oh, yeah.
ourselves. Mm-hmm.
That's so important because I think that every one of us can be so hard on ourselves.
Mm.
We have all these expectations of how we should show up, how we should navigate life, that we should be strong, all these things, but it doesn't allow us to just be human and be real. And one thing I love about my work
Mm.
is the people I work with, they are real because they're coming to me because they're hurting. And
Mm.
so I'm getting the most vulnerable part of them and the connections that it creates between individuals when you can be yourself and you can be real and you can say, this hurts. And I went through this experience and I'm willing to share that with you. That really is what draws us together as humans and allows us to be the light in the world because we're being authentic. And that's what you and I have been talking about. That authenticity is so important collectively in the world right now.
Absolutely. We are lighting the path to profound impact and collective transformation through healing our hearts. And you mentioned about your work, and thank you for your service to humanity, especially at this time and doing this work, because it takes someone really special to hold that space and to
Mhm.
be there and to listen and to help people and individuals and the collective navigate
Mhm.
those changes, that great sense of loss, the significant transformation that happens just through listening and being present. And
Mhm.
so I encourage you, Dawn Michele, to share a little bit more about your work, how people can connect with you, and what kind of offerings you have for them.
Sure. So my work as a grief recovery method specialist, it's a educational type program. So it's not therapy, but it's therapeutic. So I take people through this process, this 7-week process, where I help them look at different losses in their life and like what they learned as a child. What are those belief systems that have kept you stuck? Because that is really why we stay in that survival mode because we don't have the tools to get out of it and thrive many times. And so we talk about that and we look at people's lives and we look at specific relationships that are really hurting our hearts. And then we do this process. It's actually an evidence-based method, which is great. And it's helped so many people around the world. We have specialists that are literally almost everywhere except for Antarctica. So
Maybe
it,
you'll be the one if you're listening from Antarctica.
right? I know. So it really does allow people to have a tool in their toolbox to use for things that are going on in the present, things that have happened in the past, and things that will occur in the future. And what I love about the grief recovery method is I teach these tools to someone and they can use them for the rest of their life and they don't have to come back to see me all the time. They can, I'm always here. In fact, I stay very close to my clients. When I'm thinking about them, I reach out to them because that is the connection really that helps all of us heal. And it's important to me to know how my clients are, to check in with them and make sure they're still thriving. I
Hmm.
I love the connection. Somebody asked me yesterday when I was talking to them, how do you do the work you do? Because they were telling me an absolutely heartbreaking story that happened to them.
Hmm.
And I said, I can do this because people come to me because they truly want transformation in their life. They really
Mhm.
want to heal and they want to find that joy again. And it feels amazing to help someone get to that point instead of them staying stuck. So it warms my heart. I mean, I I see how all the things that happen in my life that were painful were actually gifts to get me to where I am today. So I can now pass on the gift of healing to other people.
I love that you said pass on because that is a huge reframe that I
Mhm.
discovered in one of my awakening moments about passion. Because
Mhm.
when you break up the word passion, it's pass I on. And
It is.
that I is your soul's expression of what
Mhm.
you're here to pass on in this lifetime. And so this is aligning your highest self with your sacred legacy. This
Mhm.
is a beautiful alignment through your journey, Dawn Michele, that you've talked about that's created this deep connection you now have with Source and through the work you do and each individual that
Right.
comes in through your doors. And I want to make sure that I have those links for people to access your work and you and everything that you have to offer in the video description. So be sure to check that out. And I love that you're offering a tool for them because we need something to help us actively mourn.
Right.
There's just that whole grief process, and there is also a mourning process that
Mhm.
is the active part, right, of doing. And so having those tools is so important. And the courage to do that. I have a course on Insight Timer on another platform that is about the courage to grieve
Mhm.
and navigating life after loss. And so that's a nice primer as well for people who are just slowly moving into that space and gathering that courage to grieve and understanding what's happening in their
Mhm.
bodies and their mind and their emotions and all of that. And so I'll link into that in the video description as well. And Dawn, I wonder if there's anything else that you'd like to share that you feel is important for people to know about you, your work, or even about grief and loss.
One thing I really like to share with people is that many times we get stuck in what's happened in our life, in the traumatic events, in the pain,
Mm,
and maybe who we were at a different time. And I try to remind people that although this was a chapter in your life, it's not your whole story.
right.
So you have the power to create whatever you want moving forward, but you need to gently release yourself from what the past was so that you can create a different chapter and a different end to your story. I it breaks my heart to see people stuck in what was
Mm,
when they can have so much more in their life and they deserve joy. We all deserve joy. And we have a light to share with each other, with the world. And when we choose to stay stuck, or when we feel like we don't have any other options, then our light dims, like you were talking about. And the world needs all of our light right now.
hmm hmm Oh, so beautifully said, and a lot to ponder there. Give us a like if you like what you just heard there and comment on how this is landing for you. I loved on that you mentioned about giving us really the invitation to release our hold on the past, to create the space for a future to take hold,
Right.
and to maybe orient ourselves to what we want to build next, what's wanting to emerge or come through us now, what's other parts of us have yet to be discovered. I know you've talked about that in some of your books, and I've talked about it in mine. And it's a real journey of self discovery and self growth, not of improvement. There's nothing to fix. You're beyond perfect as it
Right.
is, right? And it's really just about remembering that and
Hmm.
taking that transformational path to remembrance through ascension, through alignment and activation that we've been talking about as well. And so I loved our conversation today, Dawn, and I'm
Me
sure the
too.
audience has too. Love to hear how this is landing for you all. Thank you so much for joining us today on Awaken and Ascend. And Michelle, it's been such a pleasure having you here as well. Thank you,
Thank you,
thank you, thank
Jennifer.
you. Wonderful. And we'll see you all again next time on Awaken and Ascend. Bye for now.
Bye.